Good day, and welcome to another episode of Twin Takes, formerly Squeaky Chairs and Blur. We are your co-hosts, the Bray brothers, and today we're going to be talking about Batman Forever. Essentially, this is a conversation the Bray of the North and I have been having for 31 years, and we thought maybe you'd like to hear us have it as well. I'm John, like I said, and I'm joined with my brother, Greg. And so, Greg, where would you like to take this? Where would you like to start?
Well, good to see you, Bray of the South. I'm the Bray of the North. So, yeah, we decided it's been 31 years. Might as well talk about Batman Forever. This is a film that we've been seeing quite a bit lately, being discussed on YouTube, and we thought might as well weigh in.
Yeah.
And first of all, I thought we would talk a little bit about our background in Batman fandom, going back to 19 when we were children and we were watching Batman 1960 series on reruns on WPIX, I believe, in New Jersey back in late 1970s. And you would dress up wearing a bat symbol, much like you were wearing right now.
That's
and
right.
I would wear an R symbol. You would be the Batman. I would be Robin. And it wasn't really until the 1980s that we were collecting comic books and we were regular readers of the comic book series. And around that time, comic books had gotten pretty dark and were a far cry from what we were seeing in the 60s series.
Well, the one that we started with, if you remember, was Death in the Family, 1988, when Joker, spoilers, killed off the second Robin, Jason Todd, and you and I were surprised because we hadn't realized there was a second Robin. And so we collected those, and from there we went back and started buying back issues, which were much cheaper back then. So we got a host of the 60s comics, the first appearance of the Riddler in the 1960s. I know that he appeared earlier under when Dick Sprang was drawing, but he had been gone for a number of years. It was really the television program with Frank Gorshin that brought him back to the fore. And we also had all those great comics from the 70s, Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, Steve Engelhardt, Terry Austin, that collection we called Strange Apparitions, which I'm actually discussing on another podcast later this year, which is one of my favorite collections of Batman property. But we really went under the hood.
Yeah, and Marshall Rogers and all those. And the one thing
Yep.
that was really wonderful about the comics of the 1970s, some of those back issues that we were collecting, is that those comics, especially those gigantic 100-page issues, is that they would have contemporary to then stories from the 1970s, but then further back in the comics, they would have Golden Age stories in there as well, reprints of stories from the 40s and the 50s that would catch up readers who might have been new to the 1970s comics, so they would understand a little bit about the history of the characters. By the time 1989 came around, I mean, Batmania was truly through the roof. You had so much Batman merchandising, but you also had these comic book collections like the greatest Batman stories ever told, the greatest Joker stories ever told, and you had this real push in the comic book world of these Elseworld stories such as Gotham by Gaslight, Batman
Hmm.
versus Jack the Ripper. You had some real bold comic books such as Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison with art by David McKean. You had these wonderful collections that celebrated Batman's 50th anniversary, and for Bat fans, it was unlike anything we'd ever seen before.
Oh, it was sensational. We also had the first title, I believe it was 89, might have been 90, but I think it was 89. It was the first solo title. It was The Legends of the Dark Knight, which was written by, the first collection was written by Denny O'Neil and tied into Frank Miller's Batman Year One from a few years earlier. And of course, Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns kind of became the stamp for what a grittier Batman would be. And all the way up through Batman versus Superman, the film with Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, which we won't spend too much time talking about today. But you're right. And the other thing I want to point out is that one of the early treatments for the '89 Batman film actually was written by Steve Engelhardt. And so if you're able to pick up the collection of Strange Apparitions, you'll find a lot of moments that kind of coalesce between what was in the comics and what was on the screen, which is which is saying something because Tim Burton had said that with his films, the studio consciously wanted to push away from the comics and do their own thing, which is why Batman '89 feels a little bit more like a '80s revenge film. It was a time when New York City, which of course is Gotham City, was overrun with crime, and we had subway vigilantes and other kind of vigilantes. And as a genre, revenge films were very popular. So if you watch the 1989 Batman film, which was huge, it has shades of that. The kind of revenge films, revenge action films of the 70s and 80s, and then B, a structure not unlike what Engelhardt and his team did in the 1970s with that strange apparition storyline. I mean, substitute Carl Grissom for Rupert Thorne, Silver St. Cloud for Vicky Vale, etc., etc. But with a Batman that's really not afraid to kill, like his first appearance in 1939. He was totally cool with blowing up downtown Gotham City and having the public kind of thank him for it. Like, yeah, all right, that's cool.
And the first Batman's first appearance in Detective Comics in 1939, in the case of the Chemical Syndicate, yeah, he actually says outright, tell me or I'm going to kill you. Yeah.
Right.
But Batman's code appeared sometime later when they softened him up a little bit, and they removed the firearms from the bat plane and everything later on. But early on, that was certainly there. The 1989 film was very much a mix of the Frank Miller style Batman with the Bill Finger and Bob Kane, and with the Engelhardt and Rogers and Adams and O'Neil Batman. In fact, I would say the 89 Batman, which was released on his 50th anniversary, was very much a celebration, I would say, of all things Batman. It really celebrated quite a bit of the characters, and it summed up 50 years of Batman and Joker hating each other. However, as a 12-year-old watching the film, it was one of the things that made me fall in love with movies. I mean, it was very much had a foot in film noir. The Art Deco design was gorgeous. The performances were amazing. I mean, these were, as Gene Siskel said in his review, these were adults with adult problems. These were fully realized characters. These were people giving excellent performances. Michael Keaton was a phenomenal Bruce Wayne and Batman. Michael Gough was a fantastic Alfred. Jack Nicholson, I think, was an incredible Joker.
He's still my favorite live-action Joker. With all due respect, everybody came afterwards. I would say there's never been, in my opinion, it's never really been a bad live-action Joker. I know that there's somebody that that you don't particularly care for, but for me, Jack Nicholson is the standard.
I mean, and there's been quite a few great ones, and I mean, animated, I think
Mark Hamill, of course. We could kind of retire the jersey of Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy at this point. So the animated series, I think we all agree that if you're a Batman fan, yes, that is the go-to. But just focusing on live action, starting with 1989, because as much as I love Adam West, that was its own thing too. It was pop art. It was Andy Warhol.
But going back to it, in 1989, of course, the thing that really exciting is that right after that film, of course, we were all excited about the idea of sequel.
Let me jump in for a second, because you're 100% right now. But for those who are younger, we wanted to just walk you through this real quick. The 89 film was huge. There had never been a blockbuster like that before. Okay, maybe Star Wars, but truly it changed the summer blockbuster and the merchandising around the blockbuster. And there was a toy company called Toy Biz that was actually manufacturing the toys. They couldn't keep up with production. Broad, view of that, because it's a little more nuanced, and so they ended up going back to Kenner, which released the superpower figures in the 80s. When Batman Returns came out, you might not remember, maybe you remember this, Greg, that there was no fanfare. We were watching, it was like MTV Spring Break, I think, with Cindy Crawford was on or something, and suddenly they're like, oh, we've got some previews for Batman Returns. And it was either that or maybe we opened up a comic book. It was a current
affair, yeah.
Yeah, and there was something else where we opened up a comic book, and there was the bats, just like the bat signal's head with the number June 19th on it, or the words June 19th. We're like, wait, what? Why haven't we heard about this? Because we were preparing ourselves for a year beforehand for when Batman 89 was coming out, and it seemed like Batman Returns was released very under the radar. At least to me, I didn't see merchandising. I don't remember commercials outside of the current affairs, the MTV, the one thing in the comic. And it wasn't until much closer to the release that we got specials like the Robert Urich hosting the Bat, the Cat, and the Penguin. But even the commercials, you could get a sense that the studio was not 100% confident in what they were putting out. There was just a sense that something was off or something was wrong. In recent years, Batman Returns has become celebrated, and folks have said, what do you think a third Burton Batman film would be like? Like, oh, we got robbed of a third Batman film. But here's the key. Burton didn't want to make a second Batman film. The reason why they convinced him, you can find the interviews. I'm not saying anything that he himself hasn't said. But what brought him back to the table is that the studio said, what if we let you make a Tim Burton film and you have freedom? Bo Welsh designed, and he worked with Bo Welsh a bunch. Edward Scissorhands. Bo Welsh was also married to Catherine O'Hara. And he made it. He made his Tim Burton Batman film. And what folks who are younger than us don't realize is that Batman Returns was not beloved at the time. That it wasn't just McDonald's that was mad, although I did get the McDonald's toys. The legend is that McDonald's didn't like Batman Returns because they couldn't merchandise it, and therefore they closed it. No, it was more than that. There was a general sense of like this had gotten too dark. Now, Greg and I have always been a little offbeat. We love the film. Batman Returns is still my favorite live-action Batman, but it was not loved at the time. It's loved now.
And I want to add to that when, and you can find different interviews, because I saw a few video essays that are sort of spreading things that are just factually wrong. So there are a number of interviews with Tim Burton over the years. You can find them in different Rolling Stone articles. You can find different video clips on DVD extras from
Shadow
the
of the Bat.
mid-aughts.
Yep.
And so here is sort of the consensus of what happened. First of all, Tim Burton, by his own admission, was going through a terrible breakup during the time, and when he was sitting in the edit bay, his heart really wasn't into it. Now, Batman Returns, before I go any further, actually is my favorite Batman film, live action.
Yeah.
Warts and all. There's something about the characterizations, the psychology of the character, the aesthetics, the design, Michael Keaton's performance. Although, as much as I love him in the original Batman film, there's something more nuanced and interesting about the way he presents Bruce Wayne and Batman in the second film that I am just absolutely fascinated about. The way Danny DeVito presents the Penguin as performed and as designed. There's something very suffocating about the way all the characters are presented. I mean, the actors really were suffocating in their suits, but also the oppressively dark atmosphere, the seemingly skyless Gotham City also creates a feeling of, there is no air, and it's just relentless. And the other piece of it that people don't quite remember from 1992, Stefan Zapsky, who's a cinematographer, said that a critique he got from people is that the film looks like it was shot through an inkwell. Now, when the film was scanned for video, for DVD, for Blu-ray, even the recent 4K UHD, which restored a little bit of its tint and restored a little bit of its darker hues, the original screen print of Batman Returns in 1992 was very dark and very dark blue. The skin color for Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman and for the Penguin was white, and everything else was very dark blue. The closest you can see to the original represented coloration of the film print is in the Susie and the Banshees music video Face to Face, which you could find on YouTube. That's what the film looked like in theaters. Like, visually it was oppressively dark, and they removed that when they scanned it to video, just because it was very difficult for the audience to look at the film for too long. But I thought it was gorgeous.
Agreed.
And so when the studios looked at the film prior to release, they actually were giving Burton notes about what they wanted to cut. Burton fought everything to keep the things he wanted in the film. And even Keaton was like, I think we went too far with what we did in this film, and felt like he was taking a backseat to some of the villains and had some concern about what it was. But when there was a conversation with the studio, well, what do you think we really should do differently? The studio was like, everything. Like what are we doing with this? Like, this is a very dark film. And the studio was actually worried that they were going to get an R rating. And so when Burton talks about, at some point once the film was done, and he looked at the film and he said, you know what, actually I'm kind of happy with this, and then, like, maybe for the third one I can, I have a couple of ideas. And the studio said, why don't you do a smaller budget film now? Why don't you do something else? And he's like, oh, you guys don't want me to do another one. Okay, I got it. And they're like, no, we like what you're doing, but why don't you do, and Hollywood speak, that means pack your stuff, you're done. And he got that. He understood. His heart wasn't really into it, so he moved on. So there never was really going to be a Burton Batman 3 film. And so now I'm seeing a bunch of AI slop appear, which I have a strong objection to, but I'm seeing a bunch of AI slop appear of like, this is what Batman 3 would look like if Burton had done it. This is what blah, blah, blah. It was never going to happen.
Nope.
There was no Burton Batman 3 ever on the horizon. And so, the notion that somehow this was like ripped from him, or that this, there was something that he could have done, or that there was a beloved property that would have continued, honestly, is fantasy. And I say this as somebody who is a big defender of Batman Returns. I'm so happy the film has found an audience.
Agreed.
Especially for the screenwriter Daniel Waters, who I am a huge fan of his work.
Heathers, The Adventures of Hudson Hawk. Yep.
Hudson Hawk just had a sold-out screening that he attended, and I just saw on social media that he attended, and he talked about the applause and the laughter and the audience and how happy he was for it. I would actually love to see a Daniel Waters Batman 3, to be honest with you.
I would love to see Daniel Waters. You can see a couple of different what-ifs if they had continued in the Burton vein. There's Batman 89 comic book by Sam Hamm, who wrote the screenplay for he was one of the screenwriters. He was the screenwriter, but after the Hollywood strike, the third act of Batman 89 was written by other people. But he wrote the screenplay, I'll say, for Batman 89, and he also wrote the Batman 89 comics. So you can see where that would go. There are a couple of novels that have come out that one takes place between Batman and Batman Returns. The other one is what would a third Batman movie look like in this universe. Personally, I didn't find those books satisfying. But that brings us to 1995. So there's a change in guard. Joel Schumacher, who had done Falling Down and The
Lost Boys,
and The Lost Boys, two very big hits. And so he's brought on board to do the next Batman. He was a window dresser, I believe, and worked at the knitting factory, Andy Warhol's knitting factory. So there's the pop art connection right there. And the original script for Batman Forever, which I have on my computer, was written by the Bachelors, and I believe they're a husband and wife team. And if you read the screenplay, they do a lot of what Frank Miller did in The Dark Knight Returns, where it's characters on a TV set talking pop psychology. And there are some ideas in there that are interesting, but visually I don't think they would have been interesting to look at. And so Akiva Goldsman comes in and does a redraft of the script. And unlike 1992, 1995 had it was Batmania 2. Lots of advertisements. I remember there was an Entertainment Weekly. And Greg, you might remember this better than I do. It was maybe 1993 when they announced that Val Kilmer, Chris O'Donnell, Tom Lee Jones, and Jim Carrey were going to be the cast. And we were excited. Kilmer had just been in Tombstone and was incredible as Doc Holliday. Jim Carrey was making it big with In Living Color. Then, of course, he was in The Mask, which you and I loved when it came out in 1994. And then Tom Lee Jones just won the Academy Award for The Fugitive. And then Nicole Kidman, who's always amazing. And so we got very excited for this cast. If we can't have Keaton, at least we're getting Val Kilmer, and this is brand new. And there was a lot of excitement. There were a number of TV slots, a number of the toys came out, and of course I have a couple here. I'll show this one. This is from the 1995 Kenner collection. This is Tom Lee Jones' Two-Face. They recently did a reprint of it for Target. I think you have that, right?
Yeah, I've got the Two-Face and the Batman right here.
Yeah, I got the Target, and I have a Batman that I opened along with one that's on the wall. I also have here the 1995. Again, this was part of a 2-pack collection of the Riddler in his green tights. And
if I may,
yeah, go ahead.
This is a vintage 1995 T-shirt that I bought when I was a senior in high school.
Nice.
But there was a lot of excitement about the film prior to coming out. There was MTV specials. There was the music video, "Kiss from the Rose," which was actually already released on a previous Seal record that Joel Schumacher loved, and just put on the record, put on the soundtrack for.
It's hard not to sing that song when you think about it, right? I'm not going to make us sing it because if we do, there'd be a copyright issue. I'm not even worried about sporting with people's ears. I'm just more.
That would be my first concern. Actually, copyright would be second. And a lot had changed culturally between 1989 and 1995 as well. You had mentioned that in 1989, New York City, Bernie Getz, vigilante culture, Death Wish, etc. By 1995, it was just a few years later. It's only 6 years later. The texture of real life New York had changed quite a bit. Disneyfication of Times Square, etc. The economics of the United States of America had changed in a very big way. We were already post-grunge in the United States. The Spice Girls are tuning up, for crying out loud.
Yep.
Oh, I forgot to show off my Batman wristwatch as well.
Oh, I've got more stuff, but I figure I'd
yeah,
save
it's
that
behind
later.
you. We could see.
Well, no, I mean, I thought.
by it.
Well, I could show it now, but I thought I might show it later after we talk about the film because it has had a resurgence in smaller pockets. The release the Schumacher cut, but I do have this McFarlane action figure from. This was part of a set of all the movie Batmans, and I got this independent on eBay. And then just a couple of years ago, you've already shown us the Target figure, but also I wish GameStop wouldn't do this. They put the price tag right in the front, but McFarlane again released a line of Batman Forever action figures, and even I think that this is Matchbox put out the Batman Forever Batmobile. So yeah, there's a lot of merchandising that's come back because they know how to get us. It's like, oh, nostalgia. We'll make a fortune in nostalgia. These two guys, one in the south, one in the north, they'll buy it all.
So yes.
But yes, you're saying the texture.
It's just us keeping it alive. So you had this. So you had all this merchandising, and there was a big buildup for it. Of course, for you and I personally, we're seniors in high school, so there's a big, exciting sort of end of the year kind of thing. And when the film finally came out, it was this sort of big pop culture phenomenon, right? And what it really did was it was a film that was very much, it's almost kind of hard to explain because I remember seeing the theater for the first time, and a film that was very much of its time, it was of its moment. And by that, I mean it was very June 1995. Mm-hmm. So for folks who have seen the film and might not care for it at this point, especially those who might be a little bit younger, when we were watching the film for the first time in the theater, when the guard was swinging on the safe and he swung back into place, there was tears in the theater. When Two-Face took the red metal doohickey known as the Club,
yep,
which in June of 1995, we knew what that was, but about 2 months later, people did not know what it was. It was one of those as seen on TV merchandising things.
Right.
I'm not going to spend time unpacking what that was. You're on the internet. You can find out. When he put that onto the helicopter steering mechanism, it was a roar of laughter in the movie theater. And so it was very much of that time. And so as people were watching the film and as I was in the theater, the jokes landed.
So it's summer 1995, and we're graduating from high school. There's all this buzz around the film. And so a group of us went to see the movie, and it was colorful. And what Schumacher did was he created what were essentially cinematic splash pages, if you're familiar with splash pages in comic books, that whereas the Burton films, if they overlapped with the comics, at the time, it was by accident. But the truth is, there was a lot of overlap with the comics. There was, especially in Batman Returns, a lot of overlap with the 60s show with Penguin running for mayor and Penguin taking the Batmobile. Burgess Meredith's Penguin did both of those things in the 60s show. But really, they were consciously trying to move away from the comics. They get absorbed into the comics and the style throughout the 90s. Now we just say, oh, it's just like the comics. But they were much different than the comics when they were released. So in 95, watching Batman Forever on the screen, it was like, oh, this is the comics. Now it's more like the Golden Age comics. The characters did a lot more talking. It was a little bit more colorful. Tom Lee Jones's performance in particular was a little silly. And we if you know the story around there, we know why he was a little sillier. Even sillier than the way the script had him performing. And it was fun. It was a big, fun, over-the-top celebration of these characters in a film that was unapologetic about his comic book status. Val Kilmer was a really good Bruce Wayne. He had an excellent look. He worked as Batman. Chris O'Donnell was an excellent, albeit slightly older Robin than what we had in the comics. Um, Tom Lee Jones's Two-Face resembled the Matt Wagner Two-Face from the comics, if you know the comic book faces. Even the kind of yin-yang with the one side being kind of dripping like blood when he jumps out in the parachute, like that's out of Matt Wagner's faces. So watching this, it felt, and of course we just held up the Riddler suit. So watching this felt like, oh, these are folks who read the comics and know the comics. But there was a sense that something was missing, but we can get back to what that missing thing was in a moment. And it was joyful. And what we forget is just how much audiences in that moment loved the film.
And you also had Arkham Asylum shown in live action for the first time.
For the first time.
He was also referred to as the Dark Knight in film for the first time. He wasn't even referred to that in the Burton films. And you had, like you said, unapologetic, comic. You had this beautiful production design by, Barbara Lang, who sadly we lost just this week, who was a remarkable production designer who won the Oscar for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, had also done the production design for Mrs. Doubtfire, where she kind of took the Burton aesthetic and then amplified it with like this real cyberpunk look, and just made it bigger, made it bolder, made it more colorful, gave it that sort of primary color gel splash, borrowed a little bit from the Dick Tracy film from a few years earlier. And, they just had, just gave it a lot of that mix of not just Burton, not just the 90s comics, not just the 80s comics, not just the 70s comics, but also the 50s comics as well.
And something about it, too, is that it ended the story. That we got the full arc, the first movie. Who is this guy? Why is he doing it? A kind of a Citizen Kane thing with the two reporters trying to figure him out. The second one, we really get into the psychology of Batman through an expressionist lens. So with expressionism, in this case, it's a blended expressionism in which everything that we see on screen is a piece of Batman. It's like his soul was streaked out on screen, and so from Max Schreck being kind of a vampire power sucker to the orphan of Danny DeVito's Penguin to Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, a Bruce Wayne Batman who was a woman, poor, and had enough, and has a transformation. So everything on screen was really delving into it. And also Batman did not have an arc in Batman Returns. He didn't need it because he just shows up and he's Batman. He gets framed for murder. He doesn't stop. He's Batman. He doesn't even say like, man, I got framed. That stinks. He's just like, well, all right, just going to keep being Batman. Like there's no...
He didn't lose a limb, an eyeball, bladder control. Yeah.
And so in the third one, what I liked is that now that we're in this new moment, a lot happened, as you were saying, the change in 6 years. Now he's questioning, who am I? Why am I doing this? Is it just a scared kid in the dark? So when at the end of the film, by way of having a junior partner, that Batman says, I'm Batman because I choose to be, I mean, roll credits and get ready for the next filmmaker to come in because they ended the story. And so 2 years later, we suddenly get Batman and Robin, and it was rushed into production. Val Kilmer was out. George Clooney was in. And we're not going to spend too much talking about Batman and Robin. Maybe we can do another episode that like 3 people will watch.
No thanks.
And the a couple of things I actually liked about Batman and Robin, but that's not for now. But we weren't hungry for it.
I've seen a couple video essays that talk about it, and the kindest thing that I will accept is that it's unlike any other comic book film that you will see made today. Even Thor: Love and Thunder couldn't do what Batman and Robin did. And I will say that Uma Thurman understood the assignment.
Absolutely. Loved Uma Thurman. See, I loved the design, the costume design, and I loved Arnold Schwarzenegger's design too.
And I did think that the Proto Nightwing costume looked pretty cool, but I'm going to stop there.
You can stop there.
But as I said, with Batman Forever, I kind of hung up the film for a while, and it really was those fan edits that brought me back. So a little bit about the fan edits. So the original cut of Batman Forever, the way it was intended, was the opening scene was supposed to be Dr. Burton, a reference to Tim Burton. He's a producer in name only in the film to keep folks that enjoy the Burton films, to come back in. And Joel Schumacher did ask Tim Burton for his blessing to direct the film. Burton pretty much said, "I don't care," and Schumacher was like, "That sounds like a blessing." So, but Schumacher, Denny O'Neil, when I spoke to him, said that he met both Burton and Schumacher and said that they were both lovely guys, and he couldn't say enough nice things about Joel Schumacher as a human being. He said that he didn't care for his sensibility as a Batman filmmaker. It's kind of strange that Mask of the Phantasm came out on video around the time that Batman Forever was coming out into the theaters, because in a strange way, Mask of the Phantasm was almost a much better reflection of where the comic books were at that point, and in some ways one of the finest Batman films ever made. Batman Forever was a departure from where the comic books were in that moment. But Schumacher really wanted Tim Burton to be okay with it. Burton was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so Burton's name was still on it. But the way that it was supposed to go was the opening scene with Dr. Burton seeing that Two-Face had escaped, and the opening action scene, the theatrical cut with the bank robbery, was going to come a little bit later. And so some of the scenes were a little bit out of order. There was a scene where the Riddler had actually hacked into Batman's computer, virtually using his box, so that whenever Batman got electronic, there's a robbery in progress, that Batman was diverted to the wrong location, which is how Riddler and Two-Face was able to commit the robberies. I honestly didn't think the film needed that. I actually like Batman not going out and missing things because he had those self-doubts about whether or not he wanted to do the mission. I thought thematically that made more sense. I didn't need Riddler hacking things. There's actually one scene that's on the DVD of where Batman goes into a salon, and they kind of make fun of him, and I think that scene doesn't really work. There's another scene, deleted scene, that you mentioned a little bit earlier, I think, where after the Batman breaks up a robbery and Robin saves him, where Batman's sitting in the Batcave. In the extended scene, Batman sees a newscaster, Kenneth Frequency, which is a little bit of a reference to both a Dan Rather incident and an REM song, where he is looking at the screen, and Kenneth Frequency, which is a bit of a Keith Olbermann type of character, encouraging Batman to quit, because Batman's presence is causing every super criminal to come to town and try to outdraw him. And Val Kilmer's Batman has a moment of self-doubt and asks Alfred, should I actually hang up my spurs and quit? And Alfred's like, yeah, you avenge your parents' death, and cops are handling the crime, and Wayne Foundation's on its feet, and doing philanthropic work. And it's not 1989 anymore. It's now 1995. See the Bray's channel for the rest of the explanation. So why not? And plus, Chase Meridian seems pretty cool. So why not? So you have this character with these kinds of self-doubts, thinking about, why am I still doing this mission? But it's actually given air. And later on in the film, we find out that in this edit, that one of the things that has caused Bruce Wayne Batman to have these self-doubts is that he feels he pushed his parents to go see the movie the night that they were killed in the alley. And when Two-Face later and Riddler later figure out that Batman and Bruce Wayne are the same, I guess, spoilers.
If they're watching this video, they've probably seen the movie.
One would hope. And they've had 31 years.
Yeah, right.
And so at one point, he gets Val Kilmer's Batman, Bruce Wayne, gets concussed, and when he wakes up, in this edit, he suddenly has kind of a weird amnesia, like a fugue state. He doesn't remember being Batman, so Alfred brings him down to the Batcave and tries to jog his memory a bit. And Alfred tells him, there's an area of the cave you don't go into, and so whatever's in there, you have to go face your fear. And Val Kilmer's Batman goes into the Batcave and finds the red leather journal that he's been avoiding. And in the red leather journal, he sees his father's writing, Thomas Wade's writing, that says, Martha and I have decided to go to the movies anyway. And Bruce Wayne suddenly realizes it's not his fault. At that point, a giant bat appears, and he kind of communes with a giant bat. And that's where he's absolved of the guilt. And in that moment, he decides, I am Bruce Wayne and Batman, right? And so his character goes on this journey, and he's absolved of the guilt, but he still has now made a decision that I'm going to be Batman. And that is the character arc for the three films. And the frustrating thing about Batman Forever the theatrical cut for me is like you cut out Bruce Wayne's character arc.
He cut out his arc, and
The film needs it.
The film needs it, and so if you have the opportunity, you can find the deleted scenes online. And the other thing they cut is early on when Batman. First of all, they cut Bruce Wayne's nightmares because you can watch different videos and stuff of Bruce Wayne waking up from a nightmare. They cut that, and we sort of need that. And they also cut one line that Two-Face delivers to Batman. So they're up in the helicopter. Just imagine this is Two-Face for a minute, and Batman is on top of Two-Face and fighting him. And he says, and Two-Face says, there it is, that gleam in your eye, and you're a killer, and you know it. And Two-Face saying that to Batman is like, holy cow. Like, yeah, he has been a killer. And he actually reconciles with that when he talks to Dick Grayson in the Batcave, says, and here's how it's going to go. You're going to go out in the night, take another life and another, and one night you won't know why. It's just that revenge has become your life. And that's very powerful because, again, you sort of need that in order to complete the arc. And since we have access to those scenes, and Greg and I have seen 3 different fan edits, that the fan edits have demonstrated that, yes, there is a much better film here that ties in much more directly with certainly 89. Now, it's not to say that there aren't some bumps in the 95 film. There is a scene with Chase Meridian on the rooftop of Gotham where she uses the Gotham Police Department, where she used the bat signal to bring in Batman and try to seduce him. That scene is just borderline unwatchable, which is a shame because Nicole Kidman's great, Val Kilmer's great, and the rest of the film sort of makes up for that moment.
The problem here's where because I'm going to harp on that, and here's where I wish Daniel Waters was there, because we both have read the Sam Hamm script for Batman 2 that did not get made. Daniel Waters came and rewrote the script and basically rebuilt it from scratch. And Dan Waters, I think, is a terrific screenwriter. And one of the things that he did with the Catwoman character is that he made her a fully realized 3-dimensional character. She wasn't arm candy. She wasn't the love interest. She was a real, fully fleshed, fully realized, fully motivated character. And with Chase Meridian, played by Nicole Kidman, by the end of the film, she is a more dimensioned character. She has a lot more going for her. And yeah, they do have that, what became a trope, where she kisses Val Kilmer in the Batsuit. She later kisses Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne, and she puts together Bruce Wayne and Batman are one and the same. We see that again in Spider-Man 2. We see it again in Smallville, but Batman Forever did it kind of first, to my knowledge. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But there's but in that first scene on the rooftop, it is written to be so broad and so cartoony. Like, thank goodness they rid her. It's like she's almost a completely different character in the rest of the film.
Agreed.
And thank goodness for that, because she's a much stronger character.
Ethically dubious, because here she is, a psychiatrist. She's supposed to be studying Two-Face, but we never see her study Two-Face. She doesn't give you information. She has a Rorschach in her office that is a bat, and he says, "Hey, you're interested in bats?" She's like, "You see what you want to see." He's like, "No, I think everybody could see that's a bat." And then I said this to you earlier before we recorded. Part of me wishes that she had shown up with Commissioner Gordon after the Graysons were killed, because Dick Grayson goes to Bruce Wayne's house. Gordon said, "Thank you for taking him in, Bruce." I wish that Chase was there too, just to say, if you need anything from me, let me know, as a psychiatrist who deals with supervillain inflicted trauma. I mean, here I am trying to study the guy, and he just killed your parents. Let's talk, right? I mean, on the other hand, perhaps maybe not, because she was there as well when the Graysons were killed.
Yeah, she would.
So maybe that would have been a problem. Yeah, she would have.
She would have already been a victim of the trauma by proxy. Yeah.
But I'd rather have the problem saying, would she really be there if she's a victim of trauma by proxy? Because it feels like they just kind of forgot why she was in the film. And in the third act, she really does come along a great way, like when she's punching Two-Face's guard, when she has a conversation with Bruce Wayne. Bruce, we know, is a broken human being, so having somebody obsessed with him probably wouldn't set off the red flags that would for any ordinary human being.
Well, if we're to buy that the Bruce Wayne character in Batman Forever is the same Bruce Wayne character from Batman Returns.
Right.
In Batman Returns, he's dancing with Selena Kyle.
Yep.
And she says, why are you at this masquerade ball? This is toward the end of the third act. Why in this masquerade ball? And he's like, I'm here to see you. And she's like, that's lovely. I'm here to see Max. He's like, you and Max, you and Christopher Walken. She's like, no, pulls out a gun. This and Max. And he like hides a gun. And she's basically like, yeah, I'm here to kill him. And he's like, who do you think you are? She starts laughing, saying, I don't know. And his reaction is to kiss her.
That's his reaction. So we know Batman is broken. Bruce Wayne.
If this is the same character, then we can't be surprised by much of his reactions, right?
No, we can't.
So I'm willing to, kind of go along with quite a bit here, right? But with her character, it just, given how, I guess my problems with Batman Forever, even if we were to have the edit that I prefer, and there is an edit I prefer that makes it, quite frankly, to me, a much stronger film. Now, if you are somebody who can't get past the aesthetic, because also in the cut I saw, it pulls back a little bit from the Tommy Lee Jones ADR. So ADR is automated dialogue replacement, where in post-production they put sound in that wasn't there natively, like on set. So some of his cackling, some of his over-the-top sound effects, at one point when Riddler grabs himself, there's a cartoon sound effect that comes through that's cut. Once that stuff is subtracted, it's still going to be Batman Forever. It's still going to have the set production it has. It's still going to have the look that it has. It's still going to have the performances that it has. So if that is a non-starter for you, then you're not going to like the film no matter what.
What I realize is that I actually love the theatrical cut. I don't want the new... I don't need it to start off with the busting out of Arkham. I love that the first part of it is the bank situation. I only want 3 things back in. I want the line from Two-Face when arguing the helicopter. I want the... by the way, Batmobile driving up the wall was supposed to be in Batman Returns, but they couldn't do it, so they made the Batmissile. I'm fine with the Batmobile driving up the walls. I'm just saying that real quick because it's also in Batman Begins they do that. But I want Two-Face's line. I want the Kenneth frequency sequence where Batman considers hanging up, and I want the amnesia, and then the additional cut lines where he talks about the importance, because they have it, and when they screen the Schumacher cut first in Jersey and L.A., they have it where he remembers being a young boy and wanting to go to the movies and insisting. Like, those lines are there. They weren't in the cuts that we saw, though. They were in the kind of, specialized thing that they showed. It's a matter of, 5 minutes, 6 minutes maybe. You put 6 minutes back in the film, and for me, it's a dang good Batman film. As it is, I still like it. I'm an apologist for Batman Forever for so many reasons. I'm sure a lot of it's nostalgia for 1995. I also sort of miss more entertaining, fun superhero films. I know that that can balance lightness and darkness, and I think that Batman Forever does it pretty well. It's funny because Jon Favreau is a blink and you miss him cameo in Batman Forever, and then he comes around and he starts the Marvel Universe going with Iron Man, which is also really good balance of light and dark comedy and deeper themes. So you put those moments back in, you have a really rich Batman film. But you're right, Greg, if folks look at it and say, I don't like the way this film looks, you're not going to like it. But I will say that with the ADR, they did Tommy Lee Jones dirty. And with the edit, they cut out Val Kilmer's strongest performance of the film. And a truly powerful performance just in his career, and a career that's been marked by some truly powerful performances. And that's a shame. I hope that they will #release the Schumacher cut, just so we can have those moments back and see what could have been. Because I guarantee 2 things would have happened. One is that folks would have more fond memories of the film, and 2, Batman and Robin probably would have been a much different movie. It probably would have been a much different film.
My problem with Batman Robin actually is in part the style, because no 2 Batman films in that era were alike. And Batman and Robin, the style of it is very much a departure from Batman Forever, but just as Batman Forever stylistic is a departure from Batman Returns, which in turn was a departure stylistically from Batman. Like they're all stylistically.
It's almost like you're reading 3 different comic books by 3 different writers or 3 different artists who all were assigned a certain part of the continuity. Like you're doing issues 1 through 5, you're doing 6 through 10, you're doing 11 through 15, and that's what those first 3 movies feel like to me.
The one thing to keep in mind back then is that when these films were made, these films were not made at a time where you have things like you have today, where for instance, the Two-Face character that you had at that point was the first live-action Two-Face you had, and the live-action Two-Face that we had wasn't what you had in the comics, or even like the Richard Mall Two-Face, which was a brilliant take on it from the animated series, still my favorite take on it, where it was, good guy Harvey Dent, Two-Face, kind of the bad guy. Here we had Harvey Dent and Two-Face both being kind of villainous, both kind of blaming Batman, but more of a posh villain, more of a bad guy villain, and the coin was really kind of not really something he was married to in Batman Forever, but more of a sort of like something for him to dump his responsibility onto when he really already wanted to do the thing he wanted to do, right? And we've seen so many variations of Two-Face right now. Like Aaron Eckhart, I think, did a wonderful job as Harvey Dent in Two-Face. We've seen Harvey Dent appear in Gotham. We've seen Two-Face in a rather beleaguered show, Gotham Knights, some years ago. And then, of course, we saw a much different take on Two-Face in the Caped Crusader animated series a short while ago, where Harvey Dent was the villain and Two-Face was actually the good guy trying to hold Harvey Dent back, which was a really interesting take. So, but my point is that if you didn't like the film in 1989, or if you didn't like the film in 1992, or if you didn't like the film in 1995, like, that was it. Like, that was your film. Like, the notion of, like, well, let's just reboot this in 5 minutes anyway. It's like, nope, you're done. Like, that was it. It wasn't like there was a TV show you can enjoy instead, or an animated well, there was an animated property, but there wasn't really that many other places you could turn to get, like, your fix as a fan. Like, now there's, like, 50 million versions.
Oh, too many.
Well, I think,
Maybe.
I mean, the positive side of it, I guess, if there is, like, even though it is, really oversaturated, I mean, look at the box office numbers for superhero properties, or just, but I think that,
That's
which is kind of a shame, but I think that the positive side of it, if there is one, and maybe one of the reasons why we're seeing a love now for Batman Returns, and why there's even love for Batman Forever and releases Schumacher cut, is that there is room at the table for everybody now.
Yep.
That everybody, like, has a version. There are people who love the Nolan series. There's people who love what Snyder has done. There's people who love what Reeves is doing. There's people who love what Burton has done, to where they fantasize about what Burton would have done if he had made more. There are people who want to say, release a Schumacher cut. And I've seen videos defending Batman and Robin online, right? And there's people who, the Mount Rushmore that everybody seems to agree on of Batman is like the first figure there will be the animated series, right? So, I mean, there's room at the table for everybody these days, which is kind of cool.
And I'll just say, to quote my good friend J.D. Lewis, years ago when we were having a debate about Batman in October Country, a comic book shop in New Paltz, New York, J.D. interrupted the conversation and said, Batman is like God. He means something different to everybody. And that will be my parting thought. And so I'm glad that we have the Schumacher. I'm glad that we have a Burton. I'm glad that we have the Reeves. I'm so thrilled we have the animated series. There's just been a lot of great takes. So this was our take on our twin take on Batman Forever.
So what are your thoughts? Batman Forever, release a Schumacher cut. Is there something in there worth salvaging? Is it for you? Not for you? This has been Twin Takes Bray Review. I'm the Bray of the North.
I'm the Bray of the South.
We look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.